This is a story about a deranged world. That is the opening line, the first bit of text, and so context you will receive about Shiboyugi past its title. It's at the very end of the opening, backed by a dark, undulating background that brings to mind drowning in the deep ocean. I think that's a very interesting way to start your show. Somehow a bit more ambitious than opening on a POV attempt. At least there's room to misinterpret that. The light novel does the same, actually. It dedicates an entire page to that message, so you get it right between the girls in maid outfits and the table of contents. Really drives it home. As you might have guessed, Shiboyugi doesn't shy away from the absurdity of a world where you can play death games to put food on the table. Please keep watching the video, I am a little bit sorry about that. It's a pretty ridiculous idea that you would hope has no draw in the modern age. When we talk about things like public executions or gladiator fights, we take on a tone of disdain, a harsh, downward glance at our historical lessers. But right here and now, we live in the generation of live leak and nerve gas compilations. Death game media has existed for quite some time, but it's only been growing more popular. So I think this deranged world is an idea worth exploring. I realized I had to write about this show when I was reading the light novel. Mishiro, a classically styled Ojo-sama character, gave in to the demands of her protege and began petting her like a dog. Not so simply satisfied, the girl then demanded chin scratches as well. This was her reward for the successful murder of 5 other young women. Did I mention that everyone in this arc is only wearing towels? Depending on the quality of light novels you engage with, this might not even be in the top 10 craziest scenes you've read this month. I'm not here to judge you. We've got bigger fish to fry, and I need you to hold the pan while I gently lower these in, alright? Because the art direction of the anime is astounding, to put it simply. There's a very strong creative vision guiding the production of this show. Stylistically, I have nothing but good things to say about it, and I genuinely commend anyone who's able to take their eyes off of the thing. There's so much I want to say about how this show looks and moves, but I'm not making a review right now. So take my word for it when I say that it's good. It's also very in your face about how good it is, and how much they love how good they are. I've seen a lot of people call it pretentious, and I don't agree, but it's not a hard conclusion to draw. I'm glad I didn't finish the script before episode 5 came out because it's a great example of exactly what I mean. A section of the light novel is changed almost entirely in its context and subtext. The text of the conversation is similar, but the surrounding elements were all given a lot more, we'll say, flair. A strange man is tailing our main character home and she confronts him in a park? No. Actually, Yuki's on a depression walk and wanders into a phone booth in the middle of the void that Lane lives in. And now Mr. Man is a mysterious caller at the phone booth in 2022. Does Japan still have phone booths? They do. My bad. And there's a train just close enough to go by at a serious, intense moment of the conversation and dramatically light the environment. The exchange gets a bit comical in the light novel. Yuki takes his pill like a pushy salesman's business card and goes, "Ah, man, Japanese people just can't say no, huh?" In the anime, Deep Throat doesn't even try to convince her. He hangs up at the first sign of conflict and leaves her in a goodie bag under the phone like it's James Bond. I'm sorry, like it's Mission Impossible, I genuinely misspoke, that was on me. By nature, an adaptation is a work of art to itself, and I don't mind the liberties and license taken. But that scene in the bathhouse made me curious about how the director of the anime is going to pull this off. There's no dramatic lighting in Golden Bath, and nudity is no stranger to the avant-garde, but this is going to be hard to twist in a classic high art direction. Not that I'm discounting the novel's ability to be art, however you define it, because of its comical or lewd presentation at times. Actually, I think interfacing with the art despite its lack of traditional, serious aesthetics is essential if you're still alive. There's actually a decent amount worth analyzing here as well, which is why today's main ideas are: does Shiboyugi have something to say? And are the anime and light novels saying the same thing?
Well, did he do it or didn't she? Who are you mentioning? Lou would do a dual identity, dueling enemies, do it to him, chewing through him without doing the dental.
On its face, the anime is more serious. A few comedic moments have been cut or otherwise toned down. Scenes that are already serious get reframed, and whenever a character is about to die, we get fully original sequences, presumably of their life flashing before their eyes. But we don't get the full context the way a novel can deliver it. My favorite method of characterization in any work really is internal narration, and by spinning the entire book inside of Yuki's head, We just learn a lot about her and how she sees the world. It's honestly the best part of the story in my opinion. But we do lose a bit of that in the anime. Other than a few moments that are directly narrated, we are given an entirely different set of tools to infer the world and its circumstances. In the light novel, the first thing we learn about Yuki when she wakes up in the ghost house is that she's been poor most of her life and isn't really educated either. This all happens the moment she wakes up. In the anime, she just wakes up. This isn't an issue, but your understanding on a fundamental level will be different. The first thing we have to truly address is the games themselves. These death games are managed by a mysterious organization with enigmatic employees, all mysteriously bankrolled by mysterious societal elites. That last part isn't explicitly stated, but there's no other explanation for these games when you evaluate the operation cost for a moment. Dozens, maybe hundreds of high-quality, audio-equipped hidden cameras are scattered around meticulously prepared locations that seem to range in size from small buildings to entire theme parks. Back alley surgeons and prostheticists who operate at the border between suspension of disbelief and outright science fiction, all kinds of very, very illegal weaponry, experimental technologies, custom-tailored costumes, and inexplicable architecture. There's clearly an insane amount of money behind this operation. All of this is for the benefit and entertainment of the audience, the people who are actually paying to watch these games unfold. We don't know much about them other than that they exist and are probably crazy rich, since audience popularity directly impacts how much a player makes. There's a glum moment right at the beginning of the series, where Yuki tells these first-time players that looking cute is what gives you the most prize money. So, you might be wondering how much our stars get paid. The simple answer is not enough. Or at least, not enough for someone to play through 28 death games, like a protagonist by episode 1. The average first-time winnings are around 3 million yen. At the time that was being written, that's anywhere between 20 and 25,000 USD. Which doesn't seem too bad for just an afternoon of work, for someone with no skills, education, or certifications to speak of. Or that's what Yuki says about it. A very used car salesman-like approach to human life, considering your first game may very well be your last. You are only putting your life on the line for a few hours. And that's assuming your first game is something chill like Ghost House. You're not spending a week in the wilderness being besieged by beasts like Rico. In which case, yeah, well, you had a good run? No? You sure you didn't? Yeah, that tracks. Because an important part of this industry is that it's exploitative. It's pretty directly preying on the vulnerable, in a loan shark kind of way. Except, death games are where you go when the loan sharks are ready to kill you. In the first arc, we meet a lot of first-time players who are in the game for a variety of reasons, but really because a lot of them felt like they had to play. We have 2 debtors, 2 enigmas, 1 Yuki, and 1 girl who was pretty much kidnapped after being asked if she wanted to make some easy money. And that kind of pattern continues with most of our first-time players. Most of them are so uninformed that they don't even know that they're in a death game when it happens. There's a scary word coming up that ties all this together, but you might want to cover your ears if you're worried about too many politics in your death games. Fucking death games. Yeah, these are conditions endemic to a capitalistic society. And this book has a surprising amount to say about. Don't guess just yet. We both yell it at the same time, okay? 3, 2, 1. Society! Oh my gosh, you're so smart. We should kiss. And unless I'm just too woke, a bit to say about the women in it. See, the book is just a little bit, drenched in fetish. Or at least you would assume. See, the cast is entirely composed of young women, more aptly, girls. The death game industry, from the players to their agents, exclusively employs women, age notwithstanding. The youngest participants in these death games are elementary schoolers, while the oldest border 30. Players are generally somewhere in the 10 years between 13 and 23, with a few exceptions that prove that rule. These girls aren't just here to die, more bodies to the generic pile in the style of Squid Game's jumpsuits. No, they're here to be ogled in a noble and distant audience of observers taking in the spectacle from behind a screen, or in our cases, between the pages. And so, before the games, while the girls are still unconscious from the sleeping pills they're made to take, they are stripped and then dressed by the organizers, in whatever costume fits the game's theme. Ignoring the horror in that idea, the outfits themselves are for the audience's benefit as well, and so do tend to be a bit revealing. It's no coincidence that most of the games covered by the novel aren't exactly prudish. Of course, there are outfits that leave the girls fully covered, like the maids in Ghost House or the witches of Halloween Night. But you don't need to look very hard to figure out that these outfits are much more appealing to the average, otaku than the swimsuits of Cloudy Beach or the literally nothing in Golden Bath. That being said, the narration and narrator is much more interested in addressing this fetish and hand-waving it than actually being fetish content. The body is an afterthought, its exposure and inconvenience to brush past in pursuit of a much more pressing goal: survival. It's not an exaggeration to say that outside of a few standout scenarios, it's very easy to forget what the characters are or aren't wearing as the plot drives forward. Obviously, the anime, being animated, has no such downside or benefit depending on who you ask. In the afterword of the first volume, there's a quote I keep coming back to. The editor, Nigyozu, says that it was a work that was written with the visuals of a light novel in mind. And they didn't mean it like this exactly, but it does feel like the book is only interested in maintaining those light novel aesthetics without diving into them. And I think that lack of commentary is its own commentary, in a way. Yuki acknowledges this so coldly, accepts it, and keeps moving forward without paying it any mind. It's just another part of the world, from a girl who thinks about staring down the barrel of a gun with the same intensity she thinks about ordering bullshit off of Amazon. What more would you have her say? There are no extended diatribes on the misogynistic nature of these games or condemnations of the outright sadists who run them. It's never stated, but as a reader, you're free to draw the conclusion that you're not much different from the audience. The anime does seem a bit more overt about, that, though. I'd like to draw your attention to a very telling passage from the first arc. However, Yuki hadn't expected the others to react so strongly. This difference in opinion was the result of the others' experience, or lack thereof, in death games. They weren't used to treating their own body like a hand in a card game, or as a pawn they could discard if the need arose. They had also only learned of the preservation treatment a short while ago, and were likely not yet fully convinced of its implications. In other words, they were resistant to the idea of chopping up their bodies. The death games, in a number of terrifying ways, alienate these young women from their bodies. The preservation treatment mentioned is an invasive medical procedure that players undergo before the games start, without their knowledge, obviously. It does a few things to you, most obviously being that it replaces your blood with a fluffy, cotton-like substance that makes gore more palatable for the live studio audience. It also means that, now that the cast is half plushy, they won't die from bleeding out, and can recover pretty cleanly from things like the loss of a limb. It also does some other gross things, like eliminating body odors and preserving corpses indefinitely, eliminating the undesirable elements that make them unmistakably human. This serves a few purposes. The first is that it expands the spectacle. These girls are much harder to kill and so can struggle longer, in different states of unmaking. But because they are much harder to kill, they can also continuously participate in these death games should they choose. Yuki makes it very clear in that passage that she's no stranger to having her own limbs severed, and she's quite possibly the most talented player there's ever been. And the games are very happy to encourage this use and abuse of her own body. Completely separated from her own flesh, even if it's painful, it's just losing a leg. It's only an arm, that it's my arm is relevant, that it's a part of me, just an asset tag on the product. Something you can cleverly discard for the sake of survival. If you've lost both of your legs in an explosion, you're just a few pounds lighter, assuming someone is willing to carry you. Like I said, addressing the more serious elements of the story, in SHIBOYUGI, the body is an afterthought for a young woman with no experience, certifications, or academic qualifications. No one is more in tune to the risks and rewards of these death games than Yuki, and that's exactly how she describes herself. You don't need me to tell you this, but in case you forgot, that's a very profit-first idea of the value of a human life, and a learned attitude. Where from? You guessed it.
Society.
Not to Joker Max you, dear viewer, but basically something iPhone Venezuela capitalism. Are you following me?
Point them out. Any kind of beating they could join around. Any kind of meeting of the motor mouth emotions in the orbit of the speaking she could go without. They seek each time she wrote it down.
These books are very candid about the conditions of the world, and it explores that through the cast that has fallen through the cracks in its society. I've been talking around the players, but not really about them, so this part here is overdue. Our main character, Sorimachi Yuki, is nothing and no one. It would be a mistake to assume that she's known to anyone but her landlord and whoever happens to be working nights at the convenience store near her apartment. Yuki exists hopelessly on the absolute fringes of normal society. She has no education, she has no ability to socialize, she has no notable skills, and it doesn't seem like she could hold down a job if she ever did find one. She doesn't have any hobbies or interests. She doesn't own a game console or watch anything on TV. Her internal monologue makes it seem like she's familiar with that kind of thing, but by the time the series starts, whenever Yuki has free time, she lays down and scrolls. She does this for hours. Goes to sleep early in the morning, wakes up in the afternoon, and repeats until it's time to compete in a death game. It's a significant marker for personal progress in the story when she does literally anything about the mold overtaking her apartment, which had gotten so bad it started claiming clothes in her closet. Of course, outside of game outfits, Yuki only wears different copies of the same tracksuit. By the end of Volume 4, she's still not consistently getting the trash out before Collection Day. She has no friends, no connections outside of the games, and most importantly, no plans to quit. Yuki has exactly one talent. She is really good at death games. She had no one knowing that going in, but so far you could describe playing death games as her talent, or the only application of whatever collections of talents you imagine to be involved in that. Everyone who's ever met her describes Yuki as a phantom, and her mentor says that Yuki will go far in these games because you can't kill what's already dead. Basically, this is the only stage in the world where she can perform, the only environment where she can act as herself. Nothing about Yuki is compatible with the framework of normal society, but this is somewhere that she's not just accepted, but exceptional, and consistently rewarded for her efforts. This life or death environment where she has to maintain absolute vigilance is the one place she's comfortable. The other regular players are similar. No one keeps playing in these games just to make a profit. The risk is way too high. They keep playing because there's nowhere else for them. Mishiro, who seems totally opposite to Yuki, joined these death games not just so that she'd have a place to be above others, but because she lost everything that elevated her in the outside world. Moegi from Candle Woods is constantly thinking about what's been taken from her by being a good girl. She is desperately trying to carve herself into this space outside of the society that left her so deeply scarred, she can only look up to serial killers. Airi, like Yuki, though she hates these games, has no other real options, and happens to have that talent for surviving. Mitsuba describes herself as someone really and truly empty, with no real drive to survive, no goals within or outside of the games. She's one of many playing these death games as an extended suicide attempt. Doubtlessly, these games are a net negative on proper society. Knowing that, I think it's interesting that the novel doesn't mind showing us what it means to those outside of proper society. Volume 4 goes further in depth into this idea, with many characters who found purpose, community, and even a path to a better life through playing in these games. And we also meet the people that die in them, that lose past, present, and future for essentially nothing. We meet the people that die because of these games without ever signing their lives away. Obviously, death games shouldn't exist. And obviously, the players should find a better way to make their living. But maybe not as obviously. Can they? Where would this group of, to put it lightly, delinquents end up otherwise? I don't think we're being asked if this is the right way for anyone to live their life. But I think the question of who actually had any other paths open to them is worth asking. If the world wasn't funneling young women in this direction, there'd be no such thing as players, and certainly not 28-game veterans. There are two things I want to bring up in connection to this idea, because I do think something the author genuinely wanted to explore with this work. I'll quote the afterword of Volume 1 directly to avoid twisting any of his meaning with my paraphrasing. The year was 2021. My life had rotted away into an ugly state. Perhaps it was because I felt no prospect of making any progress in my life of submitting drafts. Or maybe because I had quit my part-time job knowing that I lacked proper life skills. Or maybe because the state of the world made it far too easy to come across distressing news. Or maybe because of the low atmospheric pressure. As a logical result of having quit my part-time job, my savings dwindled. And as I found myself living out helpless days, I spent more and more time mulling over life and death. Through that, I came to hold a number of different convictions. Every human slowly approaches death. The last thing remaining in the hands of someone who has lost all hope is the right to choose how to die. Deciding on how to die is the same as deciding on how to live. Naturally, those convictions began to appear in my writing. I remember clearly when I first noticed hues of chaos in my submissions. Those hues would grow more profound as time went on, becoming something so strong that not even I could control them, before finally leading me to the genre where they fit most appropriately. And thus, this work came into being. This is another one of the things that got me really interested in rereading and understanding this story. None of the other volumes can say they're written in this context. The relationship he has with his work is inevitably altered by the success going forward. But as an artist, and a person losing his fucking mind with the rest of the world, this was a setting and theme that came up from his heart and onto the page, despite his attempts to stop it. A sound mind is free to conceptualize it, but I don't think you can write this story and get it published without putting some serious thought into how you plan to die, on what the worth of your life ended up being after you failed to find your spot in society. These games have no place in 21st century Japan. Their existence in real life, and I say this with full conviction, is clearly abnormal. After tracking her down, Kinko's father has a request of Yuki. Destroy the games. There's a lot to be said about this passage and the one that follows it, but the word he uses, abnormal, strikes me. It's strange, it's odd, not immoral or evil, but it's an aberration on the smooth face of this society. I imagine because it exposes too much of what's underneath. He doesn't bother asking himself if, without the games, these girls could just suddenly become normal, suddenly slot her way back into the society that she's been ejected from. He also doesn't waste time morally interrogating Yuki, asking about the value of her life or what this would all mean to her by the time she finally lost. He asks her to be normal, says that she could probably find another job. Yuki doesn't say much out loud to this, but she's burning internally for the whole interaction. She had plenty of words to say to him. I have pride in being a player. I chose this path of my own volition. I'm going to clear 99 games. So take this away and get out of my sight. She was going to say that. However, no words came out of her mouth. Instead, an unintended smile formed on her face. This is a hopeless case, she thought. For Yuki, who was essentially dead to the world until her 9th game, this is like a direct attack on the only meaning she's ever found, and she spends the conversation trying not to lash out until she realizes she can probably never convince him, because he's not a player.
I came to take back that other 2 fifths of a man's soul, from a silhouette standing in the aperture to a figurehead standing in the path of a killer.
But, you know, I'd be remiss to not mention the true main point of these novels. That our main character, Yuki, is really cool. She's raw and swaggy. She's goated, cracked, god mode, real shown. She is the Goku of playing death games. She's not untouchable or infallible, but she is better. And everyone who's had the misfortune of facing her down has made the final realization that she's better. SHIBOYUGI is about hype moments and aura. It has less action-oriented moments, but right before your cleverly written, touching conversation, you will have to rate that Yuki's evasive tactics could redefine ground warfare. Whoa! I think that there's a false dichotomy in a lot of people's perception where hype moments and aura, henceforth referred to as fun, is somehow in opposition to good writing. I think good writing is how you make the fun stuff actually work. It's what turns these sequences and ideas into a story and events that you can actually get emotionally invested in. So I'm not trashing it, I'm just being honest here. You could genuinely read everything I just mentioned as flavor text for how cool Yuki is. I wouldn't recommend doing that, but it's an option that you have, and there are definitely people who have taken it. It's this contrast that interests me so much. You know, it's almost like fridge horror. Yuki's a very unique narrator, one of my favorites in the light novels so far because she's so apathetic to her own condition that you will almost miss what's really happening. She's not unaware, but she glances past the world with the same level of interest as being drowned or going to the convenience store. Now, calling the main point of the story hype moments in aura wasn't exactly serious, but the narrative is largely about navigating the death games. Yuki's not dedicating much of her time to class analysis because if she gets too distracted worrying about other people. That said, her being such a unique narrative voice means that in a story without narration, you probably have to shift your focus a bit to what's outwardly apparent. That's right, it was a segue all along.
I'm nearly on the edge, I'm about to jump in the view. I'm really not afraid of nothing.
I really do think that everything I just said matters, at least to some degree. I promise I have not forgotten about the anime, I just needed a bit of time to work up to it. Because the anime is telling a story, and it does have themes, but I've been suspecting for a short while now that the themes of that story are going to end up looking a little bit different from the light novel. Of course, I'm sure that the anime was developed in concert with the author, and the things happening in the anime may very well tie back into events in the novels that have yet to be translated into English. But as you may have guessed, I'm a disgusting EOP low IQ freak who can't read these novels without the barrier of woke localization. Oh, special thanks to Kevin Yuan, by the way. The anime has made some very interesting adjustments to the story. I've already told you I'm not mad about it, but that was 20 minutes ago before I switched topics out of nowhere, so I'll say it again. That's fine. But it is different, and I'm not sure what they're building to just yet. I don't mean things like scenes being cut or restructured. I don't know if the plot significance of the new Momino pissing scene is the same as adding rising water to the saw room, but that's not my battle to fight. When Aoi or Kokoto dies, it's quick and shocking and tragic. But when Kinko chooses to stay behind, when she attempts to settle things her own way in the anime, there's a new scene. It lasts 86 seconds and is almost entirely in live action. It cuts between blurry and desaturated scenes of nature in the city. I'm assuming moments from Kinko's life. Memories. She seems to be repeating a conversation she's had with her father, playing both roles in monotone before coming to meet with herself at the end. Assumedly her spirit, endlessly repeating the same 3 phrases, and her current self come together at the same ledge. The visuals are off-putting enough on their own, but the music is also pulling its weight to unsettle you. It's a very strange scene that I can only assume is a look into Kinko's mind as she perceives her final moments. It's very artistic, personal, maybe even intimate, and disorienting. I'm not sure that I fully understand it. Whatever it means to you, it's definitely a large step away from the moment in the light novel, which honestly gets a bit comedic. At the end of that episode, they play Que Sera Sera, which is a bit on the nose, but gets the point across just as well as the ensuing monologue and maybe, I don't know, the passionless murder we just watched? But sure. In the next arc, something similar happens when Konoha is still in the pit after losing her legs. She carries on a conversation with herself in the same way Kinko did, but her dialogue is about her name. Her real name is Shiori, which has the characters for poem and weave. She was named after Turkish rugs, which would have all kinds of symbols, stories, words, and blessings woven into them. Visually, she's alone in a forest, burning Turkish rugs in the fire of her own broken lamp. I'm assuming that this is about the regret she feels either for joining the games or stepping on that mine. She's made a mistake that forces her to burn away everything she was. The scene isn't as outright stylish as Kinko's, but you can see what they're building to here. And so they do it again, the same episode. This time it's Mishiro, hiding alone in a room. Instead of being unconscious, she's wide awake, going over all the mistakes that brought her here. And instead of endlessly repeating the same conversation, she actually talks back to herself in this weird little subconscious world. She's in the same forest that Konoha was in, but then she switches scenes a few times, revisiting different things that she's consciously angry about. Chiefly, at the root of this spiral, the day she killed her little sister, who she has to imagine comforting her. This is a pretty full look into Mishiro's insecurities. She wants status and respect and control and control. Whatever she expected to find in the games, Yuki's mere presence has taken it from her, even in her absence. In the next episode, the resolution to the scrapbuilding arc, when Chie is voted out, it goes very quietly. In the light novel, we hear her kicking and screaming the whole way down, but the anime brings us right outside of the building, where we get to watch everyone except her walk away. Her ultimate fate isn't left up to interpretation, but delayed for dramatic effect, until the agents arrive at the scene. Chie's agent sprints into the building, desperately pounds on the door of her cell, and when she gets inside, all she can do is haplessly sift through the fluff and grief. Which felt a little silly, honestly. They used poison gas on her. You can literally see the pipes on the set in every wide shot. Why did she explode into a million bits? And then, right after, Mishiro's venting in the car. It was honestly pretty funny in the novel. I was really looking forward to it. It's not so funny in the anime, though. Her agent isn't funny, and when she does vent, we fade between a few shots of her freaking out in that very cinematic way that means that this is a serious moment, with clips from the last arc in between. A moody but modern song plays in the background contemplatively as Mishiro loses her goddamn mind in the backseat. I'm gonna be honest, the two scenes brought the melodrama so high that I didn't have any choice in the matter. I was forced to start laughing. I mean, I can admit they look a bit worse when comparing directly to the light novel, but still, right? So, episode 5, the last one I'm watching before buckling down and making this video, which also releases just a short few days away from volume 5, which I am not allowing myself to read until this video is done. I went over the dramatic changes earlier, but please hear me out for a moment. Yuki's in the dark room from Black Ops 1 being interviewed by her agent for the benefit of a strange television. Presumably, audience members or just the audience in a more general sense is on the other end. This scene is entirely anime original, but it goes over some things that the novel reader should already know due to the benefit of having access to Yuki's inner monologue. It does introduce one new element though. Yuki seems to be picking up more regrets, seems to be rethinking her choice to walk the path of a player. We're shown what I expect to be more of a symptom than the root of the issue, but to put it simply, she's really sad about Kinko. I can appreciate that inclusion. I like Kinko. Yuki clearly liked Kinko, and now that she's gone, I don't blame the narrative for going back and taking the time to mourn her, especially since we're meeting her father this very same episode. But this time, he's presented much more mysteriously and with much more control. It's more like Yuki's being confronted by a surreal extension of her own grief than a decent but down on his luck guy who wants to do something about the system. He's not even physically present in the anime, and Yuki just bumbles through the conversation until he implies that there's a better option for her than playing. And the deep disgust, the anger, the insult that came through when he suggested that in the novels is just hinted at, given another visual metaphor. Yuki sounds like she's choking back her own grief when she tells this bereaved father that she has no regrets about the path that led her to murder his daughter. There's a very different story happening in these scenes, one about Yuki's growing distaste and difficulties coping with her lifestyle as a player, and another about the self-fulfilling prophecy of Yuki's fragile pride getting her killed. Whenever a girl thinks that the end is near, we have these sections that fall very squarely in the avant-garde to humanize them, and by further humanizing the players, shining a greater spotlight on the injustice that these games represent. In the novel, Kinko's father is stated to be part of a group of other indirect victims, and I'm sure it's the same in the anime, even if he doesn't say it. Yuki and he are two sides of the same coin, because you don't have to die in these games to be a victim of them. At least, that's the kind of drama I feel like we're running with right now, working more on the specific traumas that you can experience piling up, rather than emphasizing the depression and helplessness that characterize Yuki's civilian life. And I do think it's an interesting exclusion. It's another thing that changes the shape of the story being told, and not simply for the sake of rushing through the death games. I'd assume that the mold overtaking every room in Yuki's house would be great for the long, contemplative shots that the show is so fond of, or maybe we'd find a nice place to slip in that she's been taking night classes, which, they don't play too significant a role in the plot, but they're certainly important to Yuki's character, and the conclusion of what should be the final arc of the show. Speaking of, the arcs have been reordered, and a few elements of the story have changed to make some room for that. In the novels, it goes from Ghost House to Candlewood to Scrapbuilding and then Golden Bath. But this time, Candlewoods was shuffled to the end. Chronologically, nothing changes, but they're being adapted in a different order. And this actually ties back to what I mentioned at the start, about the aesthetics of a light novel and the fetish that's at home in the narrative. Without spoiling too much about Candlewoods, these girls are going to be in bunny girl costumes. There's no way around that one, and it may honestly be more outright erotic to some people than the near nudity of Golden Bath. Since I read it, I had to wonder how well that would mesh with the very serious and dramatic way the anime presents itself. I'm sure we will, but an immature part of me still doesn't reconcile the inevitable lineless art wide shot of 300 bunny girls in one room, or the soon-be-cut tickling scene, with the show that's been airing so far. And initially, my suspicions were confirmed when the anime went straight to Scrapbuilding, all the way in Volume 2 instead of biting the bullet and doing them in order. And honestly, before I went back and rewatched, I had to wonder if the show was afraid of or trying to avoid Candlewoods. Mentions of it get toned down in Scrapbuilding, and in general, there hasn't been much hype built around that legendary game. Now that I'm coming back around, the signs are there in episode 1, about how important Candlewoods is going to be to this show. Yuki ends the episode thinking back to the time she spent with her mentor, and literally taking that game's costume out of the closet, hugging it while she sleeps. In episode 5, at another dark hour before the beginning of Golden Bath, she thinks a lot about the time she spent with her mentor and what she's learned. I was initially thinking that I would be making a video about reconciling the story that is with the story that was, as far as adaptations go. But I don't think there's any lack of passion for the original in this. Instead, we're leaving it as a mystery to build to. What is the audience going to get out of it when Mishra eventually calls Yuki a veteran of Candlewoods? The answer is not much. Alright, I hate to say it, but I have to admit to myself that this took way longer to make than I was planning for it to. This is supposed to be like 8 minutes at first, and I'd be able to move on and enjoy the rest of the season. But now we need to turn this into like a post-mortem, except it's incomplete because I didn't get to analyze everything I wanted because I kept playing Slinky with the scope. Anyways, there's no more room to speculate and try to wrap it up in a cute little will they won't they bow. The show is over, and the show is weird. I can't say I understand all the changes. Most of them are neutral, but some of them just make for a worse experience than the original. I don't even know what the fuck happened in episode 11, man. Some changes are just plain odd. Moegi Mortal Kombat Fatality is a girl with a... Actually, I have to say it now the anime's out. Like, listen, I want you to fucking try and aim at morning... Look at the Morning Glory and tell me you can aim that shit. I'm so serious. I don't believe you. I do not believe... Anyways, this brutality is genuinely out of character and doesn't fit the scene. It's counter to the style of decisive action that she wants to be her trademark. You could argue it shows her lack of true alignment with that path, but we know that's not why they did that. They thought it was raw and swaggy. Whatever. On that note, Yeah, the anime doesn't really address much. The novel did have more time to grow into a work that tackles these things, considering that the best two volumes are 3 and 4. But volume 1 and 2 absolutely do spend their time on these ideas in a more potent way, while still making time for Yuki being a Terminator. I mean, that's what the entirety of Golden Bath is about, and Yuki literally finds meaning in her life by going through Candle Woods. But I digress. This is supposed to be a cool and serious anime, and so when something silly like Sumiyaka's tickling or Riko getting head scratches happens, we move the camera very far away and ask you not to think about it, pretty please. Sure, if I'm supposed to take this anime seriously, why did the fear from Metal Gear Solid 2 Snake Eater send Yuki's grief backwards through the time stream to inspire her 2 years in the past like Kabuto giving himself a Zector? Actually, no, that's not even the part. Not even the craziest part. Then they dropped the show's tagline while chanting at Yuki. Like fucking Daybreak Illusion's final episode, man. Jesus Christ. The show is so cool and serious they had to desaturate her uniform, just to let you know how serious it is. What the fuck? The verdict, basically, is that the anime sands off a lot of the edges of the original. And I don't think that it does have anything to say. Not really. It forgoes the deeper elements of the novel for the sake of delivering on deeper-looking elements. At a much slower pace, which I find odd, but that is a scenario regardless. I think it's an okay, I guess, adaptation. It's a show on its own, but a very different feeling and experience than the original. Maybe it's more in line with the manga that I haven't read? I can't tell you. I don't want to sequelitis this or say that it has any obligation to be something other than itself, but it is a bit disappointing that even though the show is so happy to peel back the layers on characters in these very intimate psychological segments, it won't go all in on Yuki or the world around her. Closing statement. I hope the visuals were cool to you guys. They were fun to do, and I am petrified of copyright lawyers, which is why I did it like that. This section was a lot less structured because I realized if I did structure it more, I might just be wasting your time. And so here's your information delivered with, I hope, brevity. I'd love to come back later and do a real analysis on the novel, and I think I might, honestly. I have a lot of notes in the document that I just did not get to use at all for this. But putting the me of right now aside, here's the original outro. I thought it was very earnest, and so I might as well share. Anyways, I'm gonna go and order the physical volume 5 now so I can figure out why they turned her French. The verdict on the light novel is a lot more clear though. Shiboyugi doesn't spend much time saying anything overtly, but these elements of the world are there and very much intentionally so. The work was surprisingly layered, and there's a lot I have to say that needed to be cut. This is an exploration of the idea in the title, of the kind of person who can and would play death games to put food on the table. But it doesn't mind leaving the shovel in front of you if you want to dig into what's going on in the background. I'm sure the things I was too cowardly to address in this video are somewhere at the back of your mind. Please allow me the excuse of scope. We are far over time already. This is only supposed to be an 8-minute video, you know. Even if you do hold it against me, thank you for watching, really and truly. I'll see you later.